Hello, lovely souls. Welcome to the Awakening to Your Soul Self podcast. I'm Christina Larero, a certified angel messenger and angel Reiki master teacher. My spiritual journey began in the spring of 2022 when my spirit team nudged me to listen to the amazing Angels and Awakening podcast by Julie Jancis. Since then, I've been learning to use my spiritual gifts and growing increasingly curious about spirituality and the various healing modalities. I'm so excited for you to join me on this special journey as we dive into spirituality and healing while exchanging our wisdom and profound insights with other remarkable healers. So grab a cup of coffee or tea, get cozy, and let's embark on the spiritual journey together. Hey there, it's Christina the Angel Messenger here. I just wanted to remind you to stay connected with me for all the latest updates and angel messages. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Christina Angel Messenger. Remember, that's Christina. If you're interested in an Angel Reiki session, you can book one virtually or in person through my website at www.christinaangelmessenger.com. Remember, that's Christina angelmessenger.com. Stay tuned for more uplifting, insightful content on this podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, lovely souls. Welcome back to the Awakening to Your Soul Self podcast. I have Margie here. She's going to talk about energy medicine and natural law. Welcome, Margie.
Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
Of course. So I always like for the guests to introduce themselves by who are you and what do you do?
Oh, I love that question. So, as you said, my name is Margie Breault. I am a foundational root teacher, an energy for life coach, energy medicine practitioner, medium, and author, speaker, mentor, you name it. I probably have the title in there somewhere. I am trained in a variety of energy medicine modalities that I weave all back into the lens of natural law. And natural law is Bonpo pre-religion, the way that people worked in unison with the earth and the stars and the sky above. And so the only things in nature that have removed themselves from that system is human beings. So everything that I do has been orally downloaded through oral transmission by Lisa Shwari Murphy into my cosmology to be able to teach it from that level of natural law, and all of the energy medicine modalities be even woven through that. I do a variety of things. I do energy for life coaching. I do transformational energy sessions. I do past life recognition sessions. I do group sound. I do sound baths. I do group healing sessions. And all of those are again woven through the lens of natural law using a combination of modalities. And then I also host workshops, and I write and I speak an awful lot.
And that's a lot to unpack. You have lots of hats on.
Always, and always bringing it back into the whole.
Perfect. So I always like my guests, if they're comfortable, to discuss their spiritual awakening.
Ooh, okay. That is so to understand the spiritual awakening, you kind of have to understand where I was before I got to the spiritual awakening.
Okay.
And so before getting on this journey, I lived a life that was very disconnected from truth, really in a state of disassociation and positive projection. And all of that was because of things that I agreed to unconsciously that I didn't know that I had the option to not agree to. So really early on in my life, around the age of 4, I became this walking projection of the things that my mother couldn't take accountability for. So my mother has her own, journey through mental health and wellness. And when I was a child, I assume, because I don't actually know, that I reminded her a lot of herself. And
Mm.
so because she had a hard time taking accountability for her own words, deeds, and actions, I became that scapegoat and that walking projection of all of the things she couldn't accept about herself. And so around the age of 4, I was told things about myself and also made to look in the mirror and tell myself things that were untrue. And so that really created this disjointed and this very disconnected idea of self. I had no idea how to identify my emotions. I always thought that I was trying to manipulate people because I thought I was always lying, because I was told I was a liar and made to tell myself that I was a liar. I I also thought that I was like the cause and source of other people's pain and suffering. And so I was always trying to work against this narrative of who I thought I believed I was, and who I thought I was and who I believed I was, because I didn't know I didn't have the option to not agree with these stories, is
Right.
someone I didn't like. So I was constantly working against this narrative of who I thought I was, trying to not be that person while simultaneously believing I was and operating in those patterns. And so, as you can imagine, that led me to a lot of self-destructive behavior in my early adulthood and even in my childhood. And because I believed I was this victim of life, I really always had humiliation and degradation and bullies really in my field, because I believe that's what I deserved, and I believe that's all I could ever have in my life. And so I was in a consistent state of disassociation and suffering, and in this place of victimhood where I always thought the world was happening to me. I always thought all these things were happening to me. And I also thought that they were always my fault, because I was the cause and source of my own suffering, but others as well. And so I was extremely anxious. I was very depressed. And then because I didn't want to cause more suffering to others, I didn't want other people to know that. So I lived in this positive projection where I was in this place where I was trying to maintain this unsustainable high energy that's just not truth, because I was so disassociating from all of those heavy and dense things. And I was in and out of therapy in my teenage years, and I felt like therapy armed me with the ability to really be able to uh, be self-analytical. But because I was constantly lying, because I believed I was a liar, therapy only made me better at that. It made me have like it made me have like a really good vocabulary, and maybe be able to sound like I had it all together, but internally I was still in a pretty heavy state of suffering. And so when I was 22 or 23, a friend of mine was like, I see the suffering you're in, and I see how much you're struggling, and I see how much you want to like be and feel better. I just started learning about Reiki. Like, I really love if you would get a Reiki session done on yourself. And so that's when I was introduced to energy medicine at all. Like, I had heard about it before, like very little, but no one really talked about it. And it was very like taboo. And that was like 10 or 11 years ago. And so I started getting Reiki done on myself. And in the sessions, I felt great. I felt this like relief of energy. And that energy would carry a little bit, but then I would so often go back into my limitations and my obstacles. And because in the Reiki sessions, I wasn't being taught any tools. It was just like this relief of energy, and feeling a little bit lighter, but not actually having any wisdom to back that up in my everyday life. And so a babysitter that I had as a kid was seeing me on my journey, and she was like, I think that because of all of the things that you've gone through in your life, that actually starting to learn the wisdom behind these practices and getting deeper with the mystic and the science behind them, and then being able to bring some of them into your life, is actually going to be what helps you. So I really encourage you to start seeking out that wisdom. So I started taking like the Reiki classes. So I started with Reiki 1, I went to Reiki 2, went to my Reiki master teacher. And from there, I discovered that 1, I love learning, and 2, I wanted to know everything. So I started listening to podcasts and reading books, and taking classes like intro to shamanism and aromatherapy, and like an intro to, making tinctures. And I was trying to unlock all of these things. I was learning about breath work and meditation and trying out yoga. I wanted to really understand myself on a deeper level, but be able to bring all of this wisdom into my everyday life. And so I'd say that was the start of my spiritual awakening. But the really ignite moment, the spark moment, where I really felt like it all came together, was as I was, going on that journey and learning all these things. That same babysitter who was like, I think you should learn about the theories. she encouraged me to come to this class with these people that she was, doing some other things with. And it was like an intro to natural law class. And I had never heard of natural law. I had heard of like manifestation, the law of attraction, didn't really understand it. The Secret was
Yeah.
really big at the time, but I didn't really understand like what any of that was. And so I was like, sure, like if you're encouraging me to go to it, I feel like it's probably a good idea. So I went to a natural law class. And this was my first time being introduced to the community that I still learn and grow with now, that I actually have the opportunity to teach with now. And this is my first time really being introduced to natural law. And so in that class, they obviously described what natural law was, the principle of ahimsa, first do no harm, working in the state of oneness. But the real moment, the real pivotal moment that I really felt like the crash of the symbol and all of that energy coming together was when they started talking about the law of polarity. So the law of
Mm,
polarity states that everything in the world and in the sky above is created of atoms. And atoms don't just have positive or negative, they have both positive and negative. And the true power of the atom and being able to operate in the world is resting, the nucleus resting in the middle. And so
mm,
if everything in the world exists of atoms, then we must all have positive and negative too. So what goes up must go down. If there's a darkness, there's also light. If there's a left, there's also a right. So if there's a positive, there's a negative. And so the idea that I had to stay in this positive place all the time was like knocked out right there. I was like, oh my goodness, you mean I don't have to be in this unsustainable energy? I don't have to pretend like everything's okay all the time and that like I'm happy and it's all good. I don't have to be there all the time. And like true power is resting in the awareness of both and having a balance and equanimity in that state without being swayed by praise or criticism or swayed by external forces. You mean I can choose a whole different way to be? And
mm.
that was truly when I was like, I need to know everything about natural law. I need to understand how the universe works. I need to know the science behind it. I need to continue on this path. And so it's really like a two-part of my spiritual awakening, like starting with the Reiki and then really going deeper when the introduction of natural law came into my field.
It's like you had like a light bulb moment. Like you were just like, that's it.
Yeah, and that's what it was. Like I really felt like, and even saying that, like all of the little hairs are sticking up on the back of my neck. That's truly what it was. It was a light bulb moment. It felt like every cell turned on at the same time. I saw this whole new way to move through the world. And in that moment I had a choice, right? Because we all have free will. We're the authority of our
Absolutely.
body, mind, and spirit. And so I could have decided to be like, I'm not going to take that road. But I didn't. I didn't. I decided, no, I
Yeah.
want that road. I want that power. I want that truth because
Yeah.
that feels not so heavy. That feels way more balanced. That feels like freedom, like liberation. And there's so much for me to learn on that path. And I love learning. So let's go that way.
Yeah. I think, this life is all about learning, whether you're in a spiritual element or not. So I love that you were just like, I'm gonna be a sound hero. I'm gonna be this and I'm gonna be that. I mean, that's just amazing.
Oh, lifelong learning is truly like I am a sponge when it comes to learning new things. So currently right now, I'll tell you all the things that I'm in the middle of taking classes for. I'm in the middle of like my master apprenticeship to be able to officially teach some of, the foundational classes, like Energy Medicine 1 and Intro to Sound and Energy
Wow.
Medicine 2. And I teach like Intro to Natural Law. So that first class that I had the opportunity to take, like I now teach that class.
Full circle.
And I also am taking my master's right now. So I'm in my master's for organizational psychology with plans to get my PhD. I'm in the middle of a reflexology class, uh, learning how to read the energy of your feet and your hands through a different lens. Um, I'm in the middle of learning about acupressure and being able to access the body through those pressure points with rhythm. And even though some of the classes that I take are not woven through that lens of natural law, when I'm practicing it, I'm bringing it all back into that lens. Like I'm bringing it through anything that's confusing, I bring to my teachers and my mentors. And I'm like, okay, well, this is the way they taught it. And I know that's not woven through this law or that law. So can you help me break it down so that we're moving it back into that natural place where it's all connected and all together? Um, so I literally am always constantly learning. And even when I've finished my apprenticeship, like I will still continue to work with my teachers as an apprentice, as a student. I will continue to take classes so that I'm continuing to learn and expand my own wisdom and my own practice and my own knowledge. Because the deeper I go and the more wisdom I hold, the more that I can bring that to other people. So the deeper I go with myself, the more wisdom I expand, the more that I'm able to help other people. And that's really my purpose and my mission is to help change the world. And if I'm not changing myself, I can't do that.
That's amazing. I definitely see you helping so many people. Just like not even in your area, but worldwide. I really feel like you're here to touch many people and teach many people.
It is 100% part of my cosmology to do that. And it's a big mission and a big purpose. And when I first started getting glimpses of that journey that I'm on, I was a little
Mm.
scared because it's like, are you sure it's me? Are you sure I'm the one who's supposed to do that? But now
Yeah,
I'm like, yes, it is me. And it's okay to be seen, and it's more than okay to be seen, because part of what I want to teach people is that I want you to be seen. I want you to be heard. I don't want you to disassociate from your experiences. I don't want you to wear your suffering as who you are. I don't want you to agree that your limitations are you. I want you to understand that the limiting beliefs that you hold and those obstacles are just things to grow through. Your suffering is not who you are. You don't need to wear it all as armor and weigh yourself down. What can you learn from the things that you've been through? How can you expand? How can you shine the light for others so that they can heal and grow? And so, because in my life, those things were taken away from me so early, it's part of my
right.
medicine now as I find it to give it to others.
That's beautiful. I'd love to segue into energy medicine. Could you talk about energy medicine and the different types for people that don't know what energy medicine is?
Yeah. So energy medicine is any sort of energy practice, and there are so many forms of energy medicine. And so finding what works for you is relevant to your field. What I resonate with might not be what someone else resonates with. So understand that any of the practices that I do don't have to be the journey that you go on. And my only advice is that if you are into energy medicine, if you're starting to dip your toes into it, is that if you notice that any of the things that are being said are limiting to you, if they are a limiting belief, just don't agree. We don't have to agree with everything that's said when we're going into these modalities. We just have to take what resonates with us. And what resonates for me are the things that don't limit me. If it's constricted and confined, then that is not the piece that I'm taking. I'm taking what benefits me and I'm leaving the rest. And so different energy medicine modalities can be Reiki, they can be sound healing, they can be engaging in breath work and mantra, they can be a sound bath, they can be getting biofield tuning, they can be acupressure, acupuncture, working in any of those modalities that are not just working on the body, but bringing body, mind, and spirit. So yoga is a energy medicine practice. Truly, if you are bringing rhythm into what you're doing and coming into that rhythmic reality, if you're weaving everything in with natural law, so many things can be an energy medicine practice. We can make running an energy medicine practice. You can make jumping on a trampoline an energy medicine practice. It's all about the intention and what you're holding. And so for me specifically, because I do so much in the world, I get a session done on myself every 4 weeks. Not
Wow.
everyone needs every 4 weeks. Not everyone wants to do every 4 weeks, but outside of the practices that I do every day. So typically in a day, I'm engaging in some sort of mantra work. I do breath work every day. I do a meditation every day. And these aren't long practices. You don't have to do it for 45 minutes. I try to move my body in some way. I'm typically sing. I really enjoy shaking my body out, especially with my 6-year-old. So we make it funny, silly, and do it in the morning. I am typically engaging in what we call the connections prayer, and I'll share that with you guys when I'm done. And then I am typically doing a lot of breath work in the day. And so on top of all the practices that I do in my daily life, I also am making sure that I'm consuming things that are good for my body, mind, and spirit. So whether it's music, whether it's the food, whether it's the things that I'm watching, I'm intentionally making sure that most of the time those things are good for my body, mind, and spirit. Because if we're looking at the law of cause and effect, the law of cause and effect says that our thoughts, our morals, our values, our habits, our beliefs, they affect our cosmology internally. They affect how we're experiencing the world, and they affect how the world is experiencing us. So if we're consuming heavy and dense words all the time, you have to realize that that's having an effect on our internal cosmology. So if you start to shift what you're listening to and what you're watching on TV and what you're engaging with, and you can start to shift the way that you're speaking to yourself, because you're not listening to like, hateful music or heavy and dense music, or lots of noise versus sound, and shift it into a different way of consuming things. And then on top of that, I do my own healing session every 4 weeks, and those healing sessions are done with my mentors. And I rotate between between some of them, but every 4 weeks, I'm seeing one of them.
That's amazing. And I love how you just said, like, they're not long practices. Or I think, I've spoken to a couple of healers throughout the couple of months that I've been doing the podcast, and they all say if it's just 5 minutes, just to recenter yourself, it's a good start.
When I start working with people, especially people that I know haven't been on a healing journey yet, or like maybe they're not they haven't had their spiritual awakening yet, I ask them if they have a gratitude practice. If they don't have a gratitude practice, my first thing to give them as like an assignment, as homework, is start to engage in 60 seconds of intentional gratitude every day. And that doesn't have to, you don't have to journal it if journaling that's not for you. Just like thinking about it, speaking it out
Mhm.
loud, noticing it in your day, 60 seconds. And you'll note it. And, I'll tell them to start to notice how their day shifts when they're focusing on gratitude, even just starting with 60 seconds a day. So it really, I get people who say, like, oh, I can't meditate, I can't do this, I can't do that. One, those are very limited beliefs. So if you're saying those things, you're probably operating in separation, which is okay. It's just an awareness. But you don't have to meditate for 45 minutes. You don't have to do it for an hour. You can do 8 minutes of a really potent, powerful, intentional meditation. It does not need to be these long, drawn out things that you have to make so much time and space for. The energy work that you're doing and the things you're engaging for should actually create space for you. So if you're feeling constricted and confined, you probably need to shorten your practice or do something different.
Right. Yeah. Like, for example, last night I just did like a 10-minute meditation, and that just felt different than when I do a 30-minute meditation because I was very intentional. I just have 10 minutes before bed. I just want to refocus my energy.
Ooh, whoop!
Where'd you
My
go?
my laptop is falling.
Oh
I
no!
have my laptop on like a stand, and the stand decided that it just like didn't want to stand. It was like, no, actually, I'm falling over on you. Um, yeah, and really, truly, those practices, if done with intention, uh, to do, whether it's to bring you peace, liberation, more energy, bring you into a peaceful place, like bring you into a calm space, release stress, whatever the intention that you're holding for whatever those 3, 5, 10 minutes are, that intention is truly what causes the reaction in your body. So knowing that the intention is very powerful. If your intention is to cut and clear a limiting belief and you're doing it in 5 minutes, you can still do it in 5 minutes. Just bring all of the energy to that.
Yeah.
Bring all of your intention to releasing it and doing it with that rhythmic practice, doing it with, adding some sound in, doing it with imagining every piece of energetic tether moving through your cells, lighting up the cells with the light of 100,000 suns, moving with the heartbeat of the earth, allowing that connection from the sky all the way into the center of the earth, feeling that connection move up and down your spinal column, and then allowing that energy to move through you. And something I said that I wanted to share was the connections prayer.
Yeah.
So the connections prayer is something that you can also do, which does all of this, and it's really quick. You only have, it's like maybe a minute. And so the connections prayer goes, I am the authority of my body, mind, and spirit, connected and protected by the highest light. This light is governed by all the laws of the universe, and this light governs me. It holds the light of 100,000 suns and moves with the heartbeat of the earth. Anyone or anything who has violated my right to free will, I hold you accountable in the highest voltage of liquid love. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free. Feed outside the circle, unify to the light, or return to the dimension in which you came. So that is a quick practice that you can do when you're feeling outside of yourself, when you want to come back into yourself, when you want to take your power back, when you want to release any of those heavy and dense energies that aren't yours.
Yeah, and as you were saying that connection prayer, I could feel the high vibrational energy from it, and it just lit up my soul. So definitely gonna have to add that to my spiritual practice.
It's a good one. And even if you only remember a piece of it, you can do it at any time. Like sometimes I'm doing that in my car when I know that I'm going to be in an intense space, right?
Mm,
Sometimes I do it when I work a worldly job outside of my energy medicine practice. Sometimes when I'm in my worldly job, I do that practice right at my desk. I'm like, all right, I need to do a quick practice right here. I'm going to do this energy medicine. I'm going to do this connections prayer right here. Sometimes I add some breath work and a mantra in between.
mm.
But it's all about like knowing that you can bring your whole self into every space that you're in. And these practices can go with you anywhere.
Yeah, and I love that, like breath work, like you said, connection prayers, as I've talked about it in earlier episodes, the oneness meditation is just a quick, like, get you centered back into your energy because the world, every person's got energy, everything's got energy. So, there's a part of you that is absorbing that energy, and you just got to like release what's not to your highest good.
Well, and a real thing that happens in the world is that, especially for empaths and sensitive people, we're taught that like we are absorbing all that energy, but
Yeah.
truly we don't have to. We don't have to take on all of that energy. And if you are working with like scalar energy and you're working with that hologram of light and sound, you're activating your own personal bubble, your hologram of light and sound that's really allowing only highlight frequency to enter and reflecting all of that heavy and dense back to wherever it came. And so if we're saying consistent and diligent in those practices, the less you actually absorb, the less that actually is going to dim your own field.
Amazing. So I'd love for you to go into natural life. I feel like when you talk about it, your aura is just nice and bright. So I'd love for you if you could do like a natural law one-on-one for people that don't know. It's like a quick half
Okay.
hour, 20-minute
Yeah,
one-on-one.
of course. So natural law, as I said in the beginning of this, is Bonpo pre-religion, the way that the universe and the earth still works separate of human beings with itself. So people have taken themselves out of it. And so part of what my teachings and the teachings of the people that I work with are to bring all of the practices back into that natural law. So natural law is not just something that's like this woo-woo thing that
Mm.
that you can't prove through science. It's actually
Exactly.
science. It's actually science. And there's science behind all of the natural laws, and it's proven that nature works this way. So it's how the water works, it's how the wind works, it's how the
Mm,
stars are moving in the sky, it's how the planets and the galaxies beyond and beyond are communicating with each other. It's how the waves work, it's how the whales work, the dolphins, the sharks, the butterflies, the bees. the grass, the trees, the mountains, the volcanoes, they're all still operating in natural law. So if we're bringing it back into that law of divine oneness and the principle of ahimsa, so the principle of ahimsa is a Buddhist principle that we first do no harm. And if we're working in the first core law of natural law, which is the law of divine oneness, we understand that we're all connected. And we're all connected because we're all coming through that same quantum field. Everything is broken down past the atom and into this quantum web of light, which is also scientifically proven to exist. Every particle, every atom is derived from this quantum field, which is this web of light and sound. It's crystalline, radiant, diamond white light, and everything is coming from that place. Everything, every atom, every particle comes from that web. So if we understand that we are all connected, then we understand that anything that we do to ourselves, we're doing unto others, and everything that we do unto others, we're doing unto ourselves. And
Right.
so if we were working in that principle of ahimsa, well, then we're going to work our hardest to do no harm to ourselves or others, and really working in a place of true compassion. Now, compassion is also something that has a misconception of it. Is like compassion sometimes thinks that people think that they have to suffer with to have true compassion. And
Mm.
compassion is not to come into the suffering with others. It's to understand and witness and see the suffering of others and hold that highest light and hold that space of kindness and passion and love and putting that love into action. True compassion is not to suffer with, but it's actually the liberation of suffering. So when we are not agreeing to go into the suffering of with others, when we're not agreeing that suffering is who we are and just an experience, we're able to stay in this higher vibration where we're holding space for other people's journeys, and we're not creating more suffering, and we're not going into the suffering with them. That's one way that we can also practice that law of ahimsa, because we're not doing harm to ourselves, because we're not going
Right.
into the suffering, and we're not agreeing to the suffering that other people are going through. We're witnessing their experience, but we're not agreeing that that's who they are and that we need to feel it too. We don't need to go into it too. So if we understand that law of oneness, that moves us into the law of vibration. So the law of vibration talks about how everything has its own vibrational frequency. And the cool
Mm-hmm.
thing about human beings is that we can actually shift our vibrational frequency, because energy is really through our heart
Yeah.
and through our heartbeat and that toroidal field, and we create our vibrational frequency through that toroidal field. So the toroidal field is like this donut shaped electromagnetic pulse that comes out from our heart, and the earth also shares that toroidal field. Like the earth has
Yeah.
its own toroidal field, and so do human beings. And so we also need to understand that emotions are just energy in motion. And so, how we determine our vibration is what emotions are we left lingering in? What are we holding? So, if we are a human being that agrees that suffering is who we are, if we're a human being that's stuck in separation, so we're in the limitation, we're in the obstacle, we're in fear, we're in judgment, we're in the shame and blame as a way of life. There's so many people there because they don't know, they don't have to be. Those are really heavy and dense emotions. So
Mm.
vibrationally, we are holding on to this heavy and dense place and space to exist. And so from that place, we're not holding a light vibration. We're not holding high light frequency. We're vibrating in a heavy place. The cool thing about human beings is that when we become aware of that, when we become aware of that's where we're operating, we can actually choose to not agree with that way of life anymore. We can
Mm-hmm.
choose a different path. And so when we're focusing on not the separation, but really coming down into our heart, those higher vibration emotions that are not based in separation, are not based in limitation and fear, are joy, gratitude, moving in optimal imagination, working from a place of not worry as our imagination, but looking at optimal and like what are the best case scenarios that can come out of
Yeah.
our life and seeing those things happen. So that is understanding that like the trees can't change their vibration because the trees are always vibrating at the same level, right? They're always in a high vibrational place because they're just trees. human beings, we have the ability to shift where we're vibrating. So understanding what you're holding and where you are can help you understand how to shift that vibration. And so when you start to shift that vibration through action, through understanding the law of cause and effect, through understanding that your thoughts, your morals, your habits, and your beliefs, and having those words, deeds, and actions align and moving in the law of action, you start to understand that you have so much more power than you thought you did in the co-creation with the universe. So bring it back to like the law of attention and the law of attraction, moving with the law of action. A law of attention, a law of attraction, action. Yep, I said it all right. So when you're moving in that place where you're understanding that you have the power to shift your vibration and that you have the power to act, and you're understanding cause and effect, you can understand manifestation and attraction a little more clearly. So when you are looking at the law of attraction, you're understanding that you are constantly attracting in our world, and manifestation is doing it with intention. What people don't understand is that missing component of vibration, your own vibration, understanding that law of cause and effect, and also understanding the law of action. So you can't just like go into a meditation and be like, okay, attract. I want to attract $1 million. Cool. I'm going to meditate on it.
Right.
That does not align you with the vibration of $1 million. That does not align you and attract you and put you in a place of action to get that $1 million. Just doing a meditation and visualizing it is not the only step you need to take to reach that $1 million. You have to understand that vibrationally, if you are working in a place of separation, if you are in a heavy and dense place, even if you do attract $1 million, it's not going to be in this like light free way that you think it's going to be. And honestly, as soon as you manifest it, it's probably going to leave just as quickly as it came, because we're not a vibrational match for what we're trying to experience in the world. Or it's not going to be a very heart-based abundance place where it's going to be like a still true heavy and dense place. It's not going to be all we thought it was going to be in the world. There's going to be a lot of challenges that come with attracting that $1 million if we are able to from that heavy and dense place. So understanding if you're moving from a place of heavy and dense and into a light place, gratitude, heart-based abundance, currency, flow, you're seeing all these powerful things come in with it. You also have to understand that you have to take action. Action isn't just a meditation. Action is taking aligned steps, aligned physical steps to align yourself with the person who is someone who has $1 million. So working with attraction and vibration and cause and effect and action, understanding that we have to align ourselves, our thoughts, our values, our habits, our beliefs, and the actions that we're taking with someone who's going to attract $1 million. Now, also understanding that most people use their imagination in worst case scenario. So that's when you're in that separation, that place of worry, fear, doubt. All of the worst case scenarios are happening there. So often we're in that place of worry. We don't think we can imagine anything else than that. And because all of our attention is focused there, so through the law of attention, we understand that where our attention goes, energy flows, and then we attract more of it. So that's the attention and the attraction working together. And so if you understand that, if you're focused on the worry and you believe those things are going to happen, if you believe those fears are true, if you believe all of those things are going to happen in the world, those are limiting beliefs. But then because we've already agreed that those things are true and that those things are going to happen and we're seeing them, we're already aligning our actions with those things to be true. So I'll give you for an example. For example, say, you're in a relationship and the person that you're with is like, one day you're going to leave me because I'm not good enough, right? They've already made the decision that they're not good enough. So that any of those things that they could do or might do that would allow them to grow as a human being, they've already agreed isn't going to work. So they're not going to do anything. They've already agreed that they're going to be left in the world. This person's going to leave them because they're not good enough. And so they're not going to take any action because they don't think their actions are actually going to change anything. So that inaction is also an action. And so understanding that we have the power to shift from that place of worry, fear, separation into the optimal if the more we break agreement with those limitations and we start shifting the use of our imagination into that optimal place, the more we start to align our actions with those beliefs. So we're moving from the worry and all the worst case scenario, and we're starting to break agreement and move into the optimal. And then because that's what we're seeing and that's what we're focused on, that's where our energy is going. That's where we're expanding. And then we start to act as if those things are true. So then we start to truly become the person that's aligning with the things that they're trying to attract in the world, because all our energy is focused there. We're not focusing our energy on lack. We're not focusing our energy on worry, on fear, on all the things that could happen that are the worst case scenario. We're starting to shift our agreement to all the worst case scenarios being truth, as now the optimal is being true. So all of the things that we start to do in the world shifts. And so that's like vibration, cause and effect, attraction, attention, action, all of those laws working together. And then also understanding that the world is not, life in the world is not happening to us, it's happening for us. So anything we're experiencing on our journey is meant to teach us something. It's not meant to punish us. It's not because we deserve it. It's because we're here to learn and grow and expand. So if we understand that everything is relevant to that journey, and that everything is relevant to learning and expansion, we start to shift the way that we look at suffering, the way that we look at hardship, the way that we look at those things happening in the world, because the world external is always going to happen. Our job as we're working in this place is to stay balanced in a state of equanimity, not being swayed by external factors, and moving in that at 80% of the time, because perfection does not exist. And Buddha's idea of like working in equanimity, the best case scenario is that we're going to be able to do it in the world 80% of the time. And 20% of the time, we're going to be in the worldly way. We're going to agree with the limitations. 20% of the time, we're going to fall. And that's okay, because that fall is how we learn. That those spaces where when we are operating in the worldly way allows us to learn more about ourselves, so that we can expand more, so that we can shine more light, so that we can dig deeper and excavate into those limiting beliefs or those obstacles that we've agreed to. And that just makes us better on the journey. That just allows us to share more wisdom with others and help others heal and grow. And so also understanding the law of correspondence. Our internal environment creates our external reality. And through the law of relativity, working with the law of correspondence, what we seek is seeking us. So if you ever notice, like sometimes if you're in a really like meditative place and you think of someone, that person calls you, right?
Yeah.
Or you're thinking like, this thing is going to happen, and then it happens. Or you dream about something and then it pops up in reality. It's because your internal environment is talking to the external reality vibrationally. And when we're really in alignment and working in those flows, our internal environment is creating our external reality. So if we're really in flow, those things are going to happen all the time. We can see how quickly we're manifesting and attracting things when we're working in all of those laws together, knowing that it's all relevant to our field. Also being aware that we all have gifts, right? Everyone is a medium. Everyone is a
Yep.
clairvoyant. Everyone has those gifts. And it's only because we've been taught that we don't, and that we can't see, and that we can't really feel energy, or we can't really connect in with the formless, is why they've been shut off. But truly, if you
100%.
start to work with all, yeah, if we start to work with all of these intentions, we stop agreeing with all those limitations, you'll understand and you'll be able to see with your own direct evidence those gifts start to pop up in your own life. And you'll really start to be able to co-create with the universe in a really powerful way.
That was a lot, but everything made sense. And I think that's really powerful because I feel like there's so many different topics, different teachers, just different everything out there that sometimes you just need a 10-20 minute conversation, just simplifying everything. And you made it very simple.
I feel like it is simple. it
Yeah.
doesn't it doesn't need to be. And so like this is the formula that heals us. Working in these natural laws and operating consciously is the formula that heals us. Having an awareness of all of this is the formula that heals us. knowing that we have that power and control, knowing that we have so much opportunity to break agreement and shift the way that we've been taught we need to learn is so powerful. That's so empowering to know
Yeah.
that I just in those 20 minutes, if you start to implement even one of the things that I just said, you will start to shift your whole life. You will start to shift your vibration. And also understanding that your vibrational field just just by existing, you have the opportunity to, without intention, shift 144,000 people's energetic field. So when you start to shift your energetic field, you will see those ripples and those waves really starting to spread out in the world. And I'll give you, for example, I have a friend of mine that I just made recently in the last couple of years. And yesterday we went for a walk. And she was like, I just need to say something to you. And I was like, okay, what's up? And she was like, I have never had a friendship with someone who pours so much into me because they're pouring so much into themselves, that has so much
Wow.
wisdom to share and has so much light to share. And you're not trying to force it down my throat. And you're always giving me examples of like when you fall and how you've experienced that growth in your life. And that truly sets you apart from other friends that I've had, because so many people will just talk the talk, but they're not actually walking the walk. And the reason that I believe you is because you're showing me that you talk the talk and walk the walk. You're doing both. You're not just trying to tell me something that you heard on a podcast. It's because you're doing it. And so I believe you because I see it growing and expanding in your life. And I see how much success you've had with having these practices operate in your life. And she was like, and I only take 1% of what you teach me, and I've seen it shift my relationships. I've seen it shift the people that I work with. And so if I know that just 1% of the 1% that you know that you've given me in the past 2 years that we've been friends can shift other people, then I know how much you're actually shifting the world because you're doing it with intention. And so it was a powerful example of, if even if you didn't have the intention to change the world, even if you didn't have intention to reach more people, just starting to change the way you're operating, even taking a minuscule part of what I've said on this podcast, you will
Yeah.
affect 144,000 people, because the more you shift, the more others around you shift, and then the others around them shift, and the others around them shift, and it's a ripple effect in the world, and it's beautiful. And if you have the intention to shift more people, then you have the opportunity to shift more than 144,000 people. You can shift millions of people with the power of intention if that's what your intended, your purpose is in the world. And that's really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, the natural law is just very empowering. Like you gave so many great examples, which I thank you for. Um, that we do, like God, universe, source has given us free will, and we need to really take those free will options. Like you said, if you keep going into the low vibrational state where the worries and the doubts, that's where your energy is going to go. But if you start shifting it and facing it towards the positive, then you're going to see that shift. And I think that's really
And
powerful.
yeah, and it's really like that optimal state. It's understanding that the fear can happen. Like those things can happen. We just don't need to agree with it. We don't need to
Yeah.
agree that those things are going to happen, because remember how I said like everything has a positive and negative, and true
Yeah.
power is resting in the awareness of both. But I don't want to agree with the fear. I don't want to agree with the negative. I don't want to live in that story. I want to live in the optimal state, understanding that both can exist, and that I will be okay even if that worst case scenario happens. If that worst case scenario happens, what did I learn from it? Not even seeing it as something that's a hindrance, but it's okay. How can I learn and grow from this experience? And if you start to shift the way that you're experiencing even those hard times, you're shifting the way that the universe is speaking to you. Because if you don't see all of those things as like these detrimental effects on your life, and you're seeing them, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? How can I, heal from this so that I can bring this healing to others? It's shifting the way that you're even experiencing the suffering occurring in your life. And so if people are interested to dive deeper into natural law, my like holy grail, my like Bible of natural law is called The Whole Elephant Revealed by Maria de Virus. but Varys. Um, she weaves all the mystic and the science together. So it's very much
I love
talking
that.
about the science behind it, but also bringing the spiritual aspect into it as well. So it's an incredible book. I really look at it almost every single week. Um, just to, it's really like something that has been very powerful and potent on my journey as I've learned about natural law.
That's amazing. I love this conversation. I've learned so much from you in this hour. My spirit team behind me is like, yes, she's right on it. The natural law, because not everybody talks about natural law and how there
Not
is
everyone knows
science
about
behind
it.
it. Right.
Yeah, well, and not everybody knows about it. And because even in the spiritual world, even in the energetic world, like there are teachings out there have that have been manipulated and put into places of power and separation and the healers not being able to own their own power because they're not actually operating in natural law. They're actually operating in a separated place because, when I first started learning Reiki, for example, I was taught like you go into a session, you turn your Reiki on, and you're just like this vessel of light. And then you leave the healing session and you turn your Reiki off. And I was like,
Oh,
why would I want to do that? Why would I want to do that? Why would I want to turn
yeah.
my light off? Why would I want to go into heavy and dense and separation? I don't want to be just this conduit of healing. I want to be this light all the time. And so understanding, I think I said this in the beginning too, when you're going into these healing modalities and you're hearing these things, if something sounds limiting, you do not need to agree with it. And that's something I very much did not agree to in my journey. I was like, I'm not turning my light off and on. I'm keeping it on the whole time. I'm not
Yeah.
doing that. I don't agree. And that was even before I even knew what natural law was. I was like, that doesn't sound right to me. But there are a lot of people who operate there. There are also a lot of people who operate in the place of like, we just need to ascend, descend, descend, descend. Well, to rise, you need to root first. We can't leave the body behind. We've got to root
Yeah.
into the earth. We've got to really connect through that law of correspondence, as above, so below. We've really got to do that internally and externally. We have to do that spiritually. We have to do that through mind, body, and spirit. We got to make sure that we're connecting the planets and the cosmos all the way into that crystalline center of the earth. And so understanding natural law allows you to weave all of it back into that, and not everyone's taught from that way.
Yeah, that's amazing. So Margie, I have to wrap this up. I'd love for you to tell people where they can find you, so social media, websites, and any offerings that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyone can find me at www.prismofbrilliance.biz. I am Prism of Brilliance on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, mostly active on Instagram. And offerings, I have in person and virtual, both energy for life coaching, transformational healing sessions, and past life recognition. I can also do sound baths with breath work and mantra, both in person and virtually. People can reach out to me by phone or by email. And then if you sign up for my newsletter, you get some freebies. And I also have available on Amazon a flow coaching coming into rhythmic reality workbook. So it's 12 months broken down with a lot of the things we've talked about today. And then I also have a natural law workbook that really dives into natural law, available on Amazon. If you go into Amazon and you search Margie Breault, you'll be able to find both of them. And the natural law workbook also really goes hand in hand with the natural law intro that I teach.
That's amazing. I'd love uh, your Instagram. I've been dabbling a little bit in there recently. And your sound bath, there's just the little clips, just raise my vibrations so much. So anybody that's interested in sound healing, sound baths, I highly recommend it. Just even if it's 90 seconds that you do, it's just amazing.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you so much for having me on the show, co-creating with me and allowing me to talk to your audience today.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much. I loved every part of this conversation. As always, friends, have a blessed, blessed day, and we'll see you next Monday.